This is Tarot by the Tree. We're continuing through our Tarot 2x2 series where we compare each of the Major Arcana to its mirror image on the other tree. Today we're going to be looking at the Hierophant. This is an interesting card, and it's got a very clear and precise meaning and a very clear message when we're doing tarot readings. When this card appears, we will know exactly what to say. As a recap, we know the 22 cards of the Major Arcana were designed to teach the Kabbalistic wisdom to the Tree of Life and the Tree of Knowledge. In this Tarot 2x2 series, we investigate each card of the Major Arcana. As we know, each card on the Tree of Life has a mirror card on the Tree of Knowledge. And we have the Tree of Life here. We have the 10 cards. The 11th card is suspended. And then we have the cards 12 to 21 on the other tree. The top card on the first tree has a mirror on the second tree. Legend has it the first tree was taught to get the archetypical ideas down. The second tree was to show the different shades or the different changes those same archetypes can sometimes be seen as on our world. The two trees in the Garden of Eden are Kabbalistic clues hidden in the Bible, and there are a few of them. At the time, many of the Kabbalistic ideas were being threatened. They were being held in some suspicion, but some of the Kabbalistic ideas did manage to get through into the final prints of the Bible as we know it today. We'll start with a description of the card, the Hierophant. The Hierophant lies on the side of the tree that's called Severity. It's the left side, it's the female side. This is the side of, as I mentioned, Severity. It's also another name for it is Cleanse. This is the side that restricts things, that keeps things pure. The Hierophant is a she. It is on that side of the pillar. It is the side of Severity, and in some decks, she's been known as La Papesse, or the female pope. Although she lies on the path of Severity, within her realm, she strives for balance, and you can see that because she's between those two pillars of Boaz and Joachim, and strives to keep her students to keep to the middle path, which is the path of mildness. She's on the side of Severity, but she uses that clout, that ability to teach mildness in the middle road. Between the two pillars of Severity and Mercy sits a lady draped in a scarlet robe. Her garments beneath the robe are pure white. She wears a golden three-tiered crown, symbolizing the Trinity of Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. We'll look a little bit more into that in a minute or two. That Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, has always been a little bit of a problem, I think, for Christianity, trying to explain that this isn't a worship of three gods. It's a worship of one God, and those are three aspects of the one God. But it's still difficult for some people to reconcile Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. We will see that this is directly lifted from Kabbalah and the Tree of Life. See that in a bit. In her left hand, she holds a wand, and it's another triple cross, also symbolizing the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. Her right hand is raised in a typical gesture of blessing. Beneath her feet are a pair of cross keys, symbolizing that she can unlock the mysteries and reveal truth. This is because she is part of a school of thought. This is not an intuitive thing. There is a progression of ideas and concepts, and she holds the key to imparting this knowledge. Kneeling before her are two students. Their heads have been tonsured or shaved as a sign of sacred study. This is a sign of worship and respect. This is a sign of putting aside your ego to learn something that you don't know, and that's at the heart of the Hierophant card. The clothes of the acolytes, of the monks or students, depict the passion of roses and the innocence of lilies, and we can see those two in other places in the cards as well. We're talking with the Hierophant, learning, institutions, the love of learning with no selfish purpose. This is the higher form of learning. The concept of the triple crown and the scepter have to do with the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. And when you look at the tree of life or the tree of knowledge, you can see that down the middle path there are 4 spheres. The very bottom one is Malkuth. That's us. There are 3 spheres above us. Yesod, which is the place of sort of spiritual awakening. Right above that is Tiferet, which is the heaven realm. And as people used to worship the sun, it's also the Jesus Buddha realm, which is the Son of God. And then finally at the top, we have Keter, which is the pure God force. Above Malkuth, we have 3 Sephiroth, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. That has been lifted from Kabbalah, but the meaning over the ages, of course, has been lost. The Hierophant has a brother, and we've talked about him last time, and that's the Emperor. The Emperor is the benevolent king, all-powerful, cannot be hurt, and binds people together. All of us would fall under the spell of the Emperor. He is the one that binds people, stops petty wars, and brings kingdoms together. But if we only had the Emperor, we would keep having new kingdoms, new villages, and they would all cling to their old ideas, their beliefs, and their superstitions. The future would be like the past, and throughout history we have seen that through successive generations, the same rituals and practices keep existing with no sign of any real development, or as we've said, evolution. Enter the Hierophant and the essential power of the Hierophant. The Hierophant preserves wisdom from the past and teaches it to those who seek improvement and to seek to avoid making mistakes again and again. These different kinds of improvement that the Hierophant might have might be equated with the early temples, and they would involve things like knowledge about crops, storage of seeds, patterns of weather, stories of heroes, the genealogy of the people in the area. It would talk about the attitudes that they try to instill, and they would try to bring truth from ignorance, and that is what the Hierophant tries to do. And in fact, that's what is essential about the Hierophant, is that she brings about the evolution of the human condition. I'm going to look a little bit, just for a second, as I was perusing the internet and looking at different people's interpretations of the Hierophant. It comes across that the Hierophant is often not your favorite card, or maybe it is, but it's often not my favorite card. As I was learning, it just seemed a little stodgy, a little strict, a little bit lacking personal freedom, and it is all of those things but for all of the right reasons. In the 60s, before that, even in the 1930s, but especially through the 60s and on, there began to be a generalized distrust of institutions. It became part of the zeitgeist, and we might have seen it as a mood that was worldwide. It was a bit of a discovery, but it's also a bit of pseudo-wisdom to reject the rules and rigid beliefs of all churches, corporations, and governments. It became quite widespread. We sometimes distrust authority as something that limits our freedom. The Hierophant card suggests that what you need now is not personal freedom. What you need now is the acquisition of new knowledge, which will come as a result of you having to adhere to a new discipline. We have to look at the Hierophant through a new lens. The Hierophant preserves wisdom and conveys it. Wisdom is the word here. The Hierophant does not convey trends or fads or superstition or unproven ideas. This is the idea that civilizations do not wallow in ignorance forever, that there is a procedure and a pattern for remembering what worked and encoding that so we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel or making the same mistake. The central idea is that we must learn about the past in order to improve the future, and that just makes sense. If somebody wants to invent a new engine that runs on air or water or something, they must first understand everything necessary to build a regular engine. They have to understand the components of engine, the way they work, all the different tricks over the ages that have made these things the powerful objects that they are. Past knowledge is a stepping stone to innovation. And also in surgery, you can come up with a new advance in surgery after you have mastered the conventional wisdom and techniques. The Hierophant card is a card that you have to have a foundation in you, and from there you can develop your intuitive or creative aspects. When we talk about the Hierophant, we know that she is on the column of severity. The column of severity is cleanse, it's restriction, it's keeping things out, it's preserving some things the way you want them to be. Two aspects of the Hierophant that people may not like are disruption and conformity. The Hierophant card is about both these things. One of them is disruption. The Hierophant card may shake up some of your previous ideas. Sometimes old ideas will be attacked, they'll be dismantled. And in time, tested wisdom will replace superstition or habit. There are many cases where people say, well, we always do it this way. That may be just a result of habit. With the Hierophant, if we always do it this way, it's because they have discovered a better way. The second thing that is difficult for somebody in the realm of the Hierophant, besides disruption, is conformity. Learning and understanding may require a lot of repetition. Remember the movie Karate Kid, wax on and wax off, having to go through the same movements again and again to get a kind of a muscle memory or a kind of automatic intellect when it comes to that. The Hierophant card is about studying and learning. It is about putting your ego on the shelf and for a while becoming a cog in a wheel. This is a way that we don't keep recycling our own ideas. We have to become open and not judgmental to these new ideas until we really understand them. Remembering that when we taught people about the Kabbalah through the tree of life and the tree of knowledge, the tree of life, the first tree that we teach the youth, has the things that we want youth to non-judgmentally enjoy and participate in. And the Hierophant is about going to school, apprenticeship, logical, scientific learning, that kind of thing. And that's what the youth are taught. On the second tree, we see that the mirror image of the Hierophant is the Tower card. The Tower card means no institutionalized body of learning can ever hold the complete truth. There's something about institutionalized learning that starts to make rules and regulations that end up putting a ceiling on how they can integrate new ideas. No one institutionalized system is going to teach you ultimate truths. And that's what the Tower card means. This was not taught to the youth because we didn't want them to think that all institutions end up being incomplete or shattered because of their lack of knowledge. This is a tendency, but it doesn't mean institutions are not to be participated in or followed. That is the other side of the Tower. It means that ultimately we must distrust institutional knowledge because in the end it can become self-limiting, but that's in the end. That doesn't mean that the body of knowledge contained is not worth learning. It is essential to learn this. It just means it isn't everything, but it is important. The Tower is on the tree of knowledge, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because a novice must trust and learn first before he or she can innovate or discard. The Hierophant must be kept hopeful and pure and optimistic. When we're doing fortunes, we talk about the Hierophant card as essential learning. We don't need to tell the person that the Hierophant card refers to a type of learning that in the end becomes the Tower card and proves not to tell all of the truth. We don't need to put the whole story into it. The Tower card means that no one system can contain the understanding and all the knowledge. The Hierophant card means we must obtain as much of that knowledge and understanding as we can, and that can only be done through the institutions that preserve the past and teach it. You can interpret the Tower card to mean that all institutions are false, but that's not true. They just have limited wisdom. They have limits, but it is nevertheless wisdom. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And in this case, we are talking about the Hierophant, and we don't, in a card reading, want to suggest that the Hierophant is useless in the end. She's not. She's essential. But the systems and institutions around her teaching can sometimes become closed-minded and self-limiting. Inner reading. What the Hierophant is telling a person in a reading is stop, slow down, put your ego on the shelf, and study. This is going to be new stuff. This might disrupt you. This might ask you to conform. For instance, if you want to be an MMA fighter, you'd be best not to just go into it, but to do some learning, to embrace the Hierophant card first, and take a year or two of just studying wrestling, and then take a year or two of just studying boxing. Learn what it has to say without adding any of your own ideas. Your own ideas come later. There is a sense of dedication in the Hierophant card and respecting the truth that it contains. It has to do with dedicating yourself, and we all have to resist the tendency to ridicule or to criticize the teachings that are going on. Be a student. We have to trust that this knowledge is important, even though it may not fit in with our existing ideas. In the Middle Ages, the opportunity to study would be a gift. Today, with all the different things we have, the idea may be cheapened a bit, where the idea of being able to study is interpreted more like having to study. But it's not the way it always was. I had an older friend who had come from England, and he was a gilder, and he did marvelous work. One of his works was presented to the Pope, and when he moved to Canada, he would do his work in a shop, and one day somebody was intrigued by his artwork and asked if he would teach him. And this friend of mine said no, and he confided to me he was quite surprised that he was even asked that question. And when the person says, well, why won't you teach me? He was still surprised. He says, well, if I did that, then we'd both know, wouldn't we? And it was just a different idea that knowledge was preserved, kept secret. It was an honor and a gift to be able to obtain some of this real knowledge. It's not quite like that now. Study leads to wisdom and know-how. It is truths versus superstition and habit. Today's study can sometimes be seen like a chore. It's tedious, and I've been a student, and I am guilty of all of these things as students seek shortcuts. We want Cole's notes. We want our essays gilded with AI. We'd like them rewritten. Study isn't always embraced with the respect it deserves. It's sometimes more like a road where we can try to find a shortcut. The Hierophant is a chance to gain understanding and skills. In a reading, when the Hierophant occurs, in my head, I would think certain things, but I would say them gently. The Hierophant is a chance to gain understanding and skills. In a reading, I would say, now is the time, and I would try to phrase this a little more gently, now is the time to get outside your own head. Your ideas don't matter right now. That's one of the meanings of the card. It's going to be hard, maybe, to embrace that for some people. I would also gently say, put aside your ego. Do not argue or criticize. You're absorbing truth here. And this is not your place or your time to do battle with the truth. Absorb, learn, study. Be a tabula rasa, which is a blank slate, where you go in and take everything from the ground up and have as little of your previous ideas standing in the way of the new knowledge. Finally, I wouldn't say this, but in my head, the Hierophant card means what you need is not inside you yet. You are ignorant. You need to learn more. Now, I wouldn't say that. That's a little harsh, but that's what this card suggests. There's a whole bunch of world beyond you, and the Hierophant is an invitation to participate in that. All right, why don't we turn to Jocelyn now and see if there are any questions.
Sarah says hello. Sarah Williams has been with us
Hi, Sarah. Yeah,
a lot.
I know. I remember Sarah.
And actually, she's asking on the Tower card, what do the yellow yods represent?
Yellow yods are considered to be um, drops from heaven or aspects of God that are falling into the present situation. This is the Tower card. This is a whole body of knowledge, ideas, opinions, morality, and it's very important. But it's not everything, and institutions sometimes become closed minded over time. And this is like God's grace through the yods have fallen to blow the top off the tower to allow a higher kind of learning to occur.
Why do the monks or students kneel before the Hierophant?
This is showing respect for the teacher and material. And I am personally embarrassed about some of the way I approached studies in my youth, where I was critical and kind of a know-it-all and things like that. This is not a time or a place for your own ideas. It's an opportunity to gain new understanding, and a certain degree of humility is required, I think.
The Hierophant card does not seem like a fun or pleasant place to be.
Yeah, that's not what it's about. If you want to be a doctor, you go to medical school, nobody thinks that's a party or a holiday. Military basic training is necessary if you want to be in that area. To learn jiu-jitsu, there's a lot of training and pain. To say that this is not a fun place is true, but this is the way to add to yourself.
Why do we trust the Hierophant if the Tower can suggest that all institutions end up becoming stagnant and resistant to new information?
Yeah, and that's the dichotomy, and that's why these different types of wisdom are on the two trees. So the first tree is taught with sort of the idealism of the Sephirah, and the second tree is some of the more subtle, the good and evil that can occur from the first tree. And in fact, it's called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, and it has both. And there is this dichotomy. The reason that we revere the Hierophant card is because she passes on truths that can and should be learned. The Hierophant is the means to greater understanding. But, as the Tower suggests, the Hierophant is not the final step of your journey, but it's necessary to continue your journey.
What would the absence of the Hierophant look like?
Without the Hierophant card, you would have her brother, the Emperor, amassing greater kingdoms and societies. Regional knowledge and so-called wisdom would reign, and they would be different from area to area. Ritual and superstition would be just woven into everything, wanting rain, the birth of a child, the health of an elder. All of that stuff would be wrapped in a big mess of unproven ritual. There'd be endless innovation and experimentation. Nobody would know the right way, so they'd try every other way. They would be reinventing the wheel every generation. It is the Hierophant that takes us from superstition to knowledge.
Well, isn't that what actually goes on now, where one country comes up with these wonderful methods and another country wants to make it their own, and they try to reinvent something that maybe it won't work as well as what's proven.
Yeah, and what the Hierophant is it stops us from going in this generational cycle every 25 years. Exactly what you're saying.
Does the Hierophant know about the meaning of the Tower card?
No, The Hierophant is a true believer. The Hierophant does not think that there is a limit or a ceiling on his belief, on her belief system. She is a true believer. She doesn't worry about things outside her arena. And her arena is truth, and it is the evolution of people and society. She's a true believer, and she sees her role as essential, and she does not see it as flawed.
Do the Hierophant and the Emperor get along and work together?
Maybe, but not necessarily. They're brother and sister, and they have two realms. The Emperor is all powerful, cannot be hurt. Everybody loves him. He binds people. People throng to him. People listen to him and obey him. With the Hierophant, not everybody wants to learn. Not everybody can shelve their ego. And in fact, the Hierophant doesn't want everybody. They want a certain type of person who can learn and who can deal with the severity of the course of study that she has. In societies, we can see many cases where the Hierophant and the Emperor don't get along. For instance, government and church have had a historical tug of war for power. Politics and universities, there's always talk of how much involvement or non-involvement. There's always there's often conflict between these two things. The emperor's kingdoms are improved through the teachings and the truths of the Hierophant. The Hierophant, in turn, benefits from the peaceful gathering ability of the emperor. They work together, but they might not get along at a tea party. I'm not sure.
Okay.
And I think that's it. That's the Hierophant, and we've looked at her brother, the Emperor. For some reason, the Hierophant is often referred to as male. I don't understand that. It's the female column, it's the female aspect, and I believe the picture suggests a La Papesse, the female pope. That's it for today. We move now onto the very center of the tree, Tiferet, the realm of beauty, and we'll get into that next Wednesday. Okay, that's it. Thank you for tuning in, and bye for now.